Begin Self-Publishing, episode number 62. The Benefits of Mentors and Masterminds with Calvin Wayman.
Interested in self-publishing but don't know where to start? Want to get your book onto Amazon? Want to hold your paperback book in your hands? Learn how on the Begin Self-Publishing podcast with your host, Tim Lewis.
I've recently been watching the replays to some of the sessions I didn't go to at the Podcast Movement conference in Chicago in July. In one of the sessions, they were saying that you should always say your name in a way to contact yourself in every single show. And I'm thinking, not really been doing that much of it. Admittedly, it says I'm Tim Lewis in the intro music. So I suppose those of you who are listening for the first time probably worked out that my name is Tim Lewis. In terms of contacting me, well, you can clearly go to the beginselfpublishing.com website and find the contact page, or find my email address on the about page. I believe it's there, which is timlewis@stoneandpress.com. Feel free to email me anything you think about the show. The other thing I learnt from watching the replays is there's now a feature which hopefully works. I haven't yet had a chance to try it out, where you can set up a one-click subscribe option on Android phones, where it will work out which podcast player you've got on Android and then subscribe to the show. So I've added this button onto my beginselfpublishing.com website. So for those of you on Android who haven't yet subscribed, if you try and click that button, it should subscribe you to the show using whatever podcast player you're using. That's the theory anyway. On today's show, I talked to Calvin Wayman, who's a guy who approached me about appearing as an interview guest on the show. Initially, I was a bit sceptical, but I read quite a large chunk of his book, and I found it quite interesting, his take on mastermind groups and the importance of mastermind groups and mentors. So I thought I would have him on the show. We also talk about something quite interesting that he did with his book promotion at the end of the show, which is worth waiting for anyway, where he basically gave away raffle tickets for people who had bought his book. So they got prizes. That's one of the things that helped him push up the paperback sales of his book. So now over to the interview. Hi, Calvin. Welcome to the show.
Tim, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, on today's show, we're going to talk about mentors and mastermind groups and that kind of stuff, which Calvin has quite a lot of personal experience with. When did you first appreciate the value of having a mentor?
The first time that I appreciated a mentor or was able to benefit from him, well, in more ways than one, I've had mentors throughout my life. I've gotten mentors kind of from afar from reading good books, right? And it wasn't until my last year in college where I really got into books and started studying what successful people were doing. And so that's where I got my first taste of like mentoring from afar, whether it was Robert Kiyosaki from Rich Dad Poor Dad, or Napoleon Hill from Think and Grow Rich, or Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Workweek, Grant Cardone in his books. But where I got my first real-world mentorship was right when I quit my day job. I first found an online mentorship community, which is what I recommend for people to start out, because you can do it anywhere you live. Sometimes we'll probably talk deeper in here about having like an in-person mentor, but as far as like an online mentor, that person was Lewis Howes. So Lewis Howes has his podcast, the School of Greatness podcast. He came out with his book, The School of Greatness. And what many people may not know is he actually has an online community and an online course called the School of Greatness Academy. And in March, I think it was February or March of 2015, that's where I found that course and got connected with his course, and then which in turn got me connected with Lewis Howes.
Yeah.
That was my very first time.
So in effect, you would recommend that if people will start, because clearly the benefits of having a mentor is that you've got somebody who's already done what you're aiming to do before. What should people look for when they're looking for a mentor in terms of a community or a group? And how do they know who's a good mentor and who's maybe they should avoid?
Well, that's what I think is cool about the day and age that we live in, is it's super easy to find out what somebody's about, whether you're looking at their social media, their website, and things like that. And it's really through that. I didn't someday stumble upon this guy named Lewis Howes and say, oh, he looks like a good mentor. I found him somewhere on social media, and then I started following his stuff, right? And I was interested in entrepreneurship, and he talked about entrepreneurship. I was interested in things like overcoming adversity and building the habits to be a successful entrepreneur. So what you need to do when you're looking for your mentor is kind of do a self-audit of what you're interested in and start finding people in that space, right? And it's actually really easy to find them because either A, you're going to find other community members and they're probably going to be attracted to him, which will kind of point you in that direction. Or since he's an influencer, most likely, he's easy to spot, right? Easy to find on that particular topic. Whether maybe you're into health and fitness. If you Google health and fitness and juicing, you might come across Drew Canoli, somebody that's like huge into juicing on YouTube. That could be somebody. I think that the most important thing is just to look. I think a lot of people just hang out too much and don't really take the steps. It doesn't take too much. Just find what you're interested in and start connecting with those types of people.
Yeah, and clearly your mentor may also be a woman.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Yes.
Why are the people you surround yourself with so important in terms of your mindset?
Oh, my gosh. Well, that's such a good question because I think what happens, and we talked about this a little bit before the show, is as an entrepreneur, we have really good reasons why we want to become an entrepreneur, right? We want to create our own life. We want to have freedom. We have these drivers to do it. But what isn't talked about enough is how lonely the journey can be, especially early on, right? When I first stepped into this, nothing could have prepared me. The emotions and the turmoil that I would end up experiencing, right? And you got to realize, as an entrepreneur, we're a rare breed, actually, Tim. Meaning, I think somebody was telling me a number of less than 5% of people are like this in the whole world. And so the way to help you overcome that, the feeling of loneliness, is you have to start surrounding yourself with people that are like you, that get you. Beyond that, people that have done it. Because you're going to hit into walls and obstacles that not only are they hard, but when you feel like you're the only one that's done that, it can feel pretty overwhelming. At the same time, when you find somebody and you can have a conversation with somebody or learn from someone that has gone through the very same thing that you're going through now, then it's such a huge weight off of your shoulder. The biggest thing that it gives you, in my opinion, is it gives you belief. It gives you belief that you can actually do it, which in turn gives you hope and it keeps you taking action. So, yeah, I don't believe it can be overstated, especially for a new entrepreneur getting started.
Yeah, well, I mean, many of the people listening to this show wouldn't necessarily be entrepreneurs as such, because obviously a lot of self-publishers are people who are doing stuff on the side. But I think in terms of self-publishing a book, it is a very entrepreneurial activity. It
is because you're being creative, right? You're doing something that's a piece of you. And that's why I'm using the term entrepreneur, because that to me, it's an individual feat, right? Writing a book is very individual. So when you start that undertaking and you hit like a writer's block and everything, if you have a group of friends that are either writing books too or have already written a book, then man, it can just give you so much confidence.
You recently wrote your first book, A Fish Out of Water. How did you go about using your sort of mentorship and mastermind contacts to help you with that process?
I started to ask around of other people that have recently written a book. And one of the people that was barely fresh off of writing their book and doing it the way I wanted to, which was what you just said is self-publishing it. I wanted to self-publish it. And so I came across a guy named Pat Flynn. So he has his podcast, SPI, stands for Smart Passive Income. Anyway, so I was living in Southern California. He had just barely come out with his book called Will It Fly? And he was a mentor to my book more than anybody else I talked to. I had talked to probably 10 people that knew something about self-publishing or the best way to do it. But I got some really good information from him because I was at an event and he was there. We just started talking and I told him I had a book that I wanted to write. And I just started asking him questions. I'm like, okay, what would you do or how did you do this? And that conversation, which was only like 45 minutes or something, it gave me so much confidence of what I was doing with self-publishing it. Because he had launched his book like 2 weeks prior or something like that. And just really cool stuff, like how you don't have to worry about the traditional publisher taking their cut. You get everything. You have a lot of flexibility. You can make it so that you could work with somebody like Amazon self-publishing or something like that. So you get your books printed on demand. So your costs are down. You don't even have to create a whole order to get your book out there. So yeah, Pat Flynn was the biggest catalyst that helped me inch forward and know I was going in the right direction when I was writing my book.
Okay. So when people talk about the concept of mastermind groups, what are they referring to? What is a mastermind group for those people who don't know?
My understanding or how I determine or think of a mastermind group is a mastermind group is typically comprised of a group of people that have similar goals and dreams, right? So let's say somebody listening to this wants to write a fiction book, right? And they're like, okay, I want to write a book on science fiction. Then what would be a great mastermind is to find a group of people that are also interested in science fiction or are writing fiction together. And what you usually do in these mastermind groups is get together and share ideas and best practices, right? For example, before this, you talked about how you read the inside of my book, and there's this foreword from my coach, Nick Unsworth, right?
Yeah.
Now, he ended up becoming my business coach, and one of the things that it's super useful is he had a mastermind component with his coaching program. As a matter of fact, in a few days, I'm traveling to San Diego to spend a weekend masterminding with several other business owners. And what it is we get together, and what it's going to feel like if you've never been a part of a mastermind, you're going to feel at home in a way you never have before in your entire life. Because chances are, if you have aspirations of writing science fiction or some other entrepreneurial venture, then your everyday friends that you hang out with or your family, every one of them are probably not like you, right? You're probably kind of odd even compared to everyone else that you know. And at a mastermind, everybody is on the same level. Everybody, or they're on the same wavelength at least. They get each other. They understand each other. And the information and the learning that takes place in masterminds to me is super magical. And not only that, you get the support of other people that get it, somebody else that just barely went through the same thing a week ago that you're now going through at the next step. Like, it's just super, super valuable. So just to kind of sum it up, people that are in the same boat as you or going after a similar goal and dream and figuring out and learning together and getting together to share what you're learning, to me, that is what a mastermind's all about. And it's so, so, so needed and valuable.
Okay. To change the subject slightly and go back to your book. First time I looked at your website about your book, you've got basically you can buy sort of multiple copies of the book and get entries into a raffle.
Uh-huh.
How did you come up with that idea? I've never seen anybody. Can you briefly explain to people, it's hard obviously on an audio podcast, what you did and where did you get the idea from?
Oh my gosh, that worked so well. To be honest, I'll be totally transparent with this. Literally the day before my book was going to be launched, it was already live technically on Amazon, but I was announcing it and to my audience the next day. Nobody had known that I was writing a book. I kept it a secret and I was announcing it the next day. And I was like, what could I do to make this more fun? And really, I was going through Facebook. It was really this random. You're going to love this, Tim. I had one of my friends, her name's Lily, randomly said something about a raffle. And it was on one of my comments. And it wasn't even about my book. It had nothing to do with my book. But she said the word raffle, and it just triggered me. And I was like, that's genius. I'm going to give something awesome away for everybody that buys a copy of my book because I want this to be super successful and I also want to have a ton of fun. And so that's really where it came from. Now, that's what sparked the idea. What I will say is my business coach and mentor, Nick Unsworth, has also had a ton of success with raffles before. I didn't think about doing it with my book until I saw that on Facebook. But then when I realized I wanted to do a raffle, it started to make sense. So my business coach and mentor Nick Unsworth has done raffles. I was at an event with him once, and his whole main focus was to capture leads. He was a sponsor at the event. And so what he did is I watched him give away a TV, and to get entered into the raffle for a TV, everybody had to just give their contact information. And that worked. He got like a ton of contacts. And then I've heard another thing that he did once is he did an online summit. And for the best people that brought the most audience to that online summit, he raffled off insanely big prizes and stuff like that. And I've just seen it work. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it big. I'm going to do some big prizes. So even though I had 0 sales that day, I decided to raffle off my book. I was going to give away an Apple Watch, an iPad Mini, and then a MacBook Pro, with the one caveat that we had to get at least 150 book sales. And the reason I had that one caveat in there is I wanted to at least make sure I had enough to cover most of the cost of it, because I didn't have it at the time. And so that's just really how it happened, totally honest and straightforward. And I'll just tell you, Tim, anybody that's thinking of doing a book launch and everything, if you can have some sort of fun raffle component, I'd super encourage to consider testing it out, because it was a ton of fun doing it in the 1 month that I did my book launch.
So is it still running, the raffle? Because I can see on your website you've got the book thing, and then it says select your package below, and you can do 30 copies, and then you do 25 copies and 20 copies. Or is that just a bulk buying option?
Yeah, that's just a bulk buy option now. I just barely had my website updated over the weekend. So there's the raffle just barely ended. I just barely gave away the grand prize, the MacBook Pro. A gentleman named Jordan Thomas was the lucky winner. And so he got a book, and so in return, he got a brand new laptop. So super, super cool.
So it was basically the more copies you buy, the more raffle tickets you get was the strategy you used. So Exactly. So in fact, this guy had 50 raffle tickets, the guy that won. And the reason is so what I typically did is one book per raffle ticket. So you got a raffle ticket every book you bought. But then I would do like specials, right, throughout the launch. So, for example, on people that were, when I announced it live, I announced it on Facebook Live that I was releasing the book. And for everybody that bought a copy, then got to have 5 raffle tickets per book. So I really encouraged people, like I gave people 3 days notice that I'm going to be doing something awesome tomorrow at noon or in 3 days at noon, and you're going to want to be there. Trust me. And I just promoted that, and I had a ton of people show up to that. And so I really wanted to reward those people that showed up. And out of the 80 people that were there right then, I think about 65 or 70 of them purchased at least one book. And so every one of them, which if you're in the online business space at all, those are not bad conversions for people that are there live. Yeah, I just rewarded people that were there with more raffle tickets. And then throughout the week, I just gave people one raffle ticket. But then as it was winding down, I wanted to give it one other push. So I ended up saying anybody that wants to get a bulk order, then I'm going to give you double raffle tickets. So it'll increase your chances of winning the iPad Mini or the Apple Watch or the MacBook Pro. And it just gave people that little extra thing to want to buy the book. Many of them would have bought it anyway, but it just made it fun. And it made people that might have thought about it for a week or something to just do it now. So it's been cool. It seems to be turning into an episode on raffles, this one now. But I was just interested in it. But when you were like selling these batches of, say, 30 copies of the book, are you selling them direct from you're not sending people to Amazon to buy, say,
No.
30 copies or anything like that?
Right. So I'm sure you're familiar with CreateSpace, right?
Yeah.
And your audience might be as well. So with CreateSpace, you can go in the back end and order whatever you want, or whatever quantity you wanted. So I wanted to give people that bought in bulk a good price, a better deal. So, for example, during the launch, my book was selling for $14.97 on Amazon in US dollars. And if somebody bought a certain number of bulk orders, then the price was down to like $10 per book. So you mentioned on my website where it showed the different bulk orders and the price on them. What would happen is if you clicked on those, it would actually just direct people to a PayPal button. So they would just pay through PayPal. And I would see that somebody did a bulk order, then I would manually just go in the back end and place the order through CreateSpace and have it shipped directly to them.
Yeah, it's quite a sensible idea, actually. So, in effect, you're just setting up CreateSpace with their address for how many copies they and pay for it out of your money. Okay, that works quite right. I presume that helped your Amazon, or at least your paperback ranking, because that all go through CreateSpace rather than your own website.
Yeah, some people have different strategies. I was more for getting it in the hands of more people than worrying so much about the rankings. I mean, even without meaning to, I had the book in a pretty big category. It was in the success category, and it still hit the top 100 of all books in the success category, which I'm happy with. And at the same time, what I really was wanting to do is making sure I got enough cash flow in my PayPal account to pay for the prizes. And so it worked very, very well to have people do bulk orders from my website, pay through it for PayPal, because then I had the money instantly, and then I could just go have it shipped to them through CreateSpace. Yeah,
so that sounds like quite a successful strategy. Are you planning on writing another book, or are you going to carry on with new marketing ideas for this book?
You know what? I am going to. I didn't know if I would, but just going through this whole process, it's been so fun that I've got to do it again. And I don't know, I have a ton of ideas that are too many to mention right now, at least three bigger, more serious ideas. But over the next few years, you can definitely expect to see another book coming out, because it was a ton of fun and I want to do it again.
Okay. So how do people find out about Calvin Wayman?
Well, you can just Google my name. I actually write for Entrepreneurial Magazine, Huffington Post, and Social Media Examiner. So most of the content that you'll find that I talk about is actually on social media. So how you can take your personal brand or your business and create more of a presence on social media. So yeah, just you can give me a Google search or find me really on any social platform under the name Calvin Wayman.
Okay. And in terms of summing up your book, Fish Out of Water, what would be your one-sentence sales pitch for that book if people were interested in the concepts behind it?
The one-sentence sales pitch is that I noticed that there is not a shortage of goals being set, but a shortage of goals being met. And it's because we all feel like a fish out of water when we go after our goals. And so this book just helps you navigate through that when you hit the point of feeling like a fish out of water. That was more than one sentence, but that's the short version, I would say.
Well, that's a good thing about audio. You can go on a bit, and people don't necessarily mind. Yeah, I mean, I've read a little bit of it, and yeah, I mean, the theme of mentoring and comes through in terms of actually getting yourself to commit to do things. So it was good to have you on the show today, Calvin.
Yeah, you just barely mentioned it too. This thing wrapping up is the making you do it. Like having that accountability from a mentor as well, super useful. So yeah, I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please stop by iTunes and rate and leave a review. This helps make the show more visible. For free resources, show notes, and other helpful content, join the community at beginselfpublishing.com.